Yeah. Patricia, this is
Eishes Chayil Miyimtso, V'rochel P'pnini Michro, Botach Balev Baalo V'sholo Lo Yechsor, Gimulasu Tova Lo Yiro Kol Yemei Chayeho, Kapa Posu Liyoni V'Yodeh Shulcho Lo Evyon, Noda Bashurim Baalo B'Shivto Im Zikni Oretz, Oz V'Hodo Levusho, V'Tischak L'Yom Acharon, Pia Posro B'Chochmo, Seras Chesed Al Lishono, Sophia Halichos Beso V'Lachematzus Lo Sochel, Komu Voneha Vayashu O Balo Vayahalalo, Rabos Bonos Osu Choyil, Yat Olis Al Kulono, Sheker Achen Vehebel Hayofi, Ishoy Ras Adonoi Hisis Halol, Tenula Mipri Yodeha V'Halu Vashori Maaseho. We read, her children rise up and call her blessed, and they praise her. So we are gathered in solemn assembly, those that are here, family and friends, to say goodbye to the person of Mrs. Task, not to the neshama, which we believe is eternal, but this is the holiday period, and so much is left out. What is proper, though, is, as I say, reminiscences and words of praise from family and friends. Howard, please. A grandson, Shlomo Rosen, from Detroit, will be speaking to us through video.
So as the Rav mentioned, as it is the middle of Sukkot, we can't do our normal type of eulogies that we would do. So we're going to just say praise. And I think on the list of speakers, I have a different perspective as a grandchild, and hope I can represent my brother Yitzhak and the other cousins Ari and Chava as well, with their view on grandma and their experience with her and the praises that we have for her. So obviously the grandma was first and foremost a loving grandma. She was the best grandma anybody could ask for. And as an early, we lived in her house for a few years. That's my earliest memories were from her house, her apartment in Rockville. And we basically considered her apartment a second home for, until she no longer lived there, and grew up with her being with all our family occasions and being at her house quite often. When we were sick, we went to her house. When we pretended to be sick, we went to her house. So it was a home away from home, and we spent a lot of our summer days there. And as I sat down last night to kind of prepare some things, the thoughts that come to mind were that grandma always wanted us to succeed, and she always wanted us to be happy. So she encouraged us to, if we had interests, if we had skills, she encouraged us to invest in those and to try to hone in on those skills, or even just if there were interests that didn't involve skills. I remember one time she used to take us to the bookstore in Rockville, Barnes and Noble, and I was into comic books at the time, and we saw a comic book there, and I didn't get it, but we just were kind of looking around, and I really wanted it. I didn't want to ask her. I didn't want to ask her to buy it for me, but we spent a lot of time there. And Yitzhak was really into his books, and I was more, he was into the history stuff, and I was into the comic books. And at some point when we got back to her apartment, I worked up enough courage to ask her if she'd buy it for me. And I was really embarrassed. And I finally got the words out to ask her if she could buy me the comic book. She's like, "Oh, don't worry, I was going to get it for you anyway." She already realized that it was something that I was interested in, and had already decided that if I wanted it, she was going to get it for me. She didn't get me everything I wanted, but she definitely, if she saw something really mattered to me, even if a silly thing like a comic book, but for a kid, that's important. She also, Yitzhak and I, for a time, were very into coloring books, and she gave us so many coloring things. She encouraged us to, I mean, she was very, I guess she was into, she as an artist was very happy that we had some type of artistic interest. So she bought us pencil packs and coloring books and taught us how to do it. I actually thought she tried teaching me how to do coloring in different shades. And I thought very strongly that I was better than her at the coloring books because mine just looked better. But so those are a lot of things that she just encouraged us, and she was always there for us. This is coming again from a child's perspective. And there are other times, well, first of all, the other thing I should mention, something we were talking about last night on the phone, was that she always had food for us, even if it was food that she didn't eat herself. She always had packs of frozen pizza in the freezer for when we would come. I don't think her or Julie ever ate that stuff. But it was always there for us. She had all her frozen foods for whoever wanted, whenever they wanted it, even if it was prepared years in advance. But it was always there. And we had what we needed. She had soda for us and everything. And from a little bit of a different perspective as well, was that she stood up for us. There were times when we needed to be defended as children. Yitzhak reminded me last night that there was a time that we were in a Kinko's and we were fooling around. She had to copy some stuff and we were fooling around. Yitzhak was fooling around more than me. And somebody started bothering us and saying, be quiet. And he was getting really loud and wasn't really so appropriate to be talking to children that way, especially not your own children. And she got in his face and she said, "You leave them alone." And he was being belligerent. She said, "If you don't leave them alone and you don't quiet down, I'm gonna call police." And she did it right in front of us, and it makes you feel protected. Not only is she there to give you the things you like, but she's there to protect you. There's another time at her pool. The pool at the pavilion was an awesome pool. We spent a lot of our summers there, a lot of memories there with her and Julie. And another kid was bothering us and calling us names. And she went over to the lifeguard and complained about it and got the kid thrown out because he wasn't being nice. And it just, you feel loved and you feel protected. And as I grew up, I also began to kind of think outside just how grandma related to me. And I also noticed how she acted in the world at large and what her attitude was on things. A lot of her paintings at the time of our childhood were these big canvases that she would go down to these like dilapidated cities, inner city areas and take pictures of burnt out buildings with people in front of them, and was kind of trying to depict, I think, the struggle of homeless people, of people that were in a rough situation. She put herself in, I guess, a little bit of danger by going down to those areas, but she took pictures and she tried to recreate the picture in a canvas painting. It took up a huge amount of her apartment. And I know she had lots of other art prior to that and even after that, but at that time period, that was what she was very into. And I think she was trying to express the plight of these people that are in unfortunate situations. And I continued to notice that was something that she cared about, people who are on a lower maybe level in society or more downtrodden. She also spent a lot of time after her public school days and after she recovered from her accident. She spent time teaching English to people, to immigrants who were trying to make it work in this country or trying to succeed. And she was teaching them English, and I think Montgomery College it was. She'd already had a fine career as a teacher and was basically retired. And she went back as a teacher, and she used to bring us sometimes when we were around her. And I met a lot of her students. She would teach these people English and try to help them, encourage them to succeed, encourage them to integrate into American society and really, succeed and be successful in life. I also began to notice her, and didn't really think much about it when we grew up. It was always Grandma and Julie. He was always around more often than not. But the love that she had for Julie was really, and him also for her, back to her, was really profound until their health started declining, until grandma's surgery, when her health started declining. Um, they lived pretty much kind of separately and would spend time with each other pretty often. But then once grandma's health started declining, I think after the hip surgery, it became more. I think they were pretty much living under the same roof, and he was caring for her, she was caring for him. It was very cute watching these two older people had their own, each one had their own issues, caring for each other. And I think she would ring the bell or something, and Julie would hear the bell and come running, saying, "I'm coming, coming." Like he couldn't run, but and same thing back, that they just had such a devotion for each other. They really had a devotion for each other. You don't see that much. And it was really something, looking back on, I didn't appreciate it at the time, but it was something that was really profound, that the amount of love and dedication, selfless dedication to give to somebody else is quite an attribute. And grandma did that to Julie. She did that for her children, to my mother and to Howard and to us grandchildren. She just gave and gave and gave. It didn't really matter how much she had to give. There was always more to give. There was never anything. She never ran out of giving. She never ran out of loving. There's also things I heard about once I grew up, that she was, and I'm sure this may be mentioned later, so I won't stress it too much because I've only heard it second or third hand, that she was involved in getting some of our relatives out of Russia, that she put herself at great personal risk to smuggle certain things into Russia, to be able to provide proper documentation to get some of our Jewish relatives out safely to America. And she did that. And again, she didn't care about herself in these situations. If there was something that had to get done, someone needed help, she did what she could to help them. And something, just one other thing I just neglected to mention before was that she, in regards to her grandchildren, she encouraged us to deal with our problems. There are two different ways you can deal with a problem. You can go around it, try to ignore it and not deal with it, or you could go right through it, accept it as an issue, as a challenge, and grow from it. And grandma did that herself, at least from my perspective, seeing her from her injury that she went through when I was very young, but I still remember her recovering from that and going to her doctors and different therapies she had to go to. And she kept trying to recreate herself in the artistic sense. Also, she learned how to do art on the computer. And even as she got older and became less functioning, and she always was trying to deal with the issue, not ignore it. And she tried to teach us to do that too. And she was very encouraging when I was old enough to actually, communicate with her problems that I had or challenges that I had, that to listen and to talk and to encourage us to deal with it. And I want to conclude with just one or two more things. I was thinking about it. Now, in the Jewish faith, we believe that every second of life is precious. Every second of life is precious, unlike what's thought about a lot in today's world, that once people become too old to function or too sick to function, life's not worth it anymore. It's not true. Every second of life on this world is precious. But it begged the question that grandma had the stroke on a few weeks ago on Rosh Hashanah, and she really was, a stroke. She had a stroke, and it affected her, and she wasn't really capable of doing any much anymore. And I asked myself, I said, at this point in her life, what is the purpose of her being here on this world? And I think it's a question that's, as much as we know that there's value to it, it's a question. We may not know the answer to it, because we don't know the answer to a lot of questions. Only God knows these answers, and he decides when a person's time is. But I was asking myself, maybe what could be the lesson from this situation? And I came up with three answers. There might be more. I came up with three answers. One answer is that when a person is ill, a lot of times we pray for them. We pray that they should have a recovery, or we do a good deed, we do a mitzvah, that in that merit of that mitzvah, they should have a recovery, or we study the Torah, we study the Bible, that should, in that merit of studying, that should give her a recovery. And even if she's not going to have a recovery, but those prayers and those special deeds provide merit for her and God listens to every prayer, and God takes every merit, and he might decide that maybe somebody else won't get sick because of that, or someone in our family will have success because of those prayers, or something. But those prayers never go unanswered, and those good deeds never get ignored. And it's in her merit. It's in grandma's merit that those good deeds were done, and though maybe charity was given, etc., and so forth. That it's in her merit, and that merit will be everlasting reward for her in the next world. And that was number one. Number two is that we just went through the high holy days, and according to the Jewish tradition, it's a time when everything, our entire year going forward, is decided. And it really kind of hit home that my grandmother had a stroke on Rosh Hashanah, and we didn't know what was going to happen from day to day. And there's 10 days of repentance. 10 days we're supposed to try to perfect ourselves and ask God for forgiveness before the Day of Atonement, before Yom Kippur. And the entire 10 days, grandma's life was really uncertain what was going to be from day to day. And even on the eve of Yom Kippur, we were not expecting, Ima spent Yom Kippur in the hospital. We didn't know what was going to be. And it really put a real lesson in for us, that if we could, that it made it real, that if we can have that perspective, that really our whole year is hanging in the balance, and we have to do our best for those 10 days to try to perfect ourselves and ask God for forgiveness and try to strive to do better. Another lesson that could have been shown is to really try to actualize this period of time, and it was just a perfect period of time for that to be internalized. The last thing, and this is the last thing I'm going to end with, is that we talked about merit, but there's a specific merit that I think was very fitting. It says in the Gemara in Tractate Shabbos, and we say it every day in our prayers, Elu dvarim she'adam ochel paraseim b'yom hazeh. Karen Kayema Solo Mahaba. There are things, these following things are things that a person can enjoy the fruits, the reward for these actions in this world, but the principal reward remains intact in the next world. One of them is, the first one mentioned, is kivud avim, honoring one's father and one's mother. Grandma has two children who were so devoted to her, and there was nothing that was not done for her. And from everything from her beginning of her initial decline way back after her hip surgery, Ima and Howard were there for her, for everything, with so much devotion and caring. And I think that Hashem, God, wanted to give 10 more days, 2 more weeks, whatever it was, that Howard and my mother could get their last chance at kivud avim, at honoring their mother. And there's nobody in this world that I've met trying to control myself because it's Cholamoids. We're not supposed to be trying to contain ourselves, but there's nobody who exemplifies the attribute of honoring their parents more than my mother. From what I've seen, when it came with Zadie a long time ago, when he started to go downhill, and Bubby and Julie, they weren't even her parents, her biological parents. She gave so much devotion to everything that they needed, whether it be medically, to keep them happy. And then this last period with Grandma was a long period. It was not easy. Grandma was in our house a lot, and that was very, very, it was wonderful. It was a beautiful time, but especially as things got moved, the dementia progressed and the health started declining, it presented its own challenges, and Ima never complained, and she did it with so much dedication, with simcha. She thought of details, things to try to make Grandma happier, more comfortable. And that's something I think we can all learn from this time period, and is that there are things that we can get everlasting reward for, and we can get reward for it in this world. And I wanted to say to my mother that, and I mentioned this to you before, that you should not have any regrets or guilt that there was anything that could have been done that wasn't, because you and Howard did everything you could for Grandma and for both your parents and Bubby as well, and Julie Alayhim Shalom, that you served them, you honored them in their last stage of their life more than anybody else could ever do. And I hope that those good deeds and that dedication will serve as a merit for both of you to have good health and all the good things that we want, that you want in life. And that we pray that Grandma's soul, her neshama, should go up to Shemayim. She left this world very peacefully. She left this world. It was almost unrecognizable that she was gone. And that's what our rabbis teach us, shows that when a person's soul is so clean and so ready to depart from this world to the next stage, in the next world, to be close to in heaven to God, that she just went. It was time to go. And that her soul should go up to heaven, and she should be able to stand in front of God and pray for all of us, for our whole family. We should have success and health and gesund, and for all of all the Jewish people, wherever they may be, and that her neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden for everlasting life in Gan Eden.
Howard?
Well, thank you, Shlomo. I have two incredible nephews. This is hard. I've been very close with my mother. My first memory is getting lost in Gem department store. I'm sure no one remembers that name. And only crying when she found me. From age 4 to 8, I was sick. I was told I almost died a couple of times. But I have image after image of her taking care of me, helping me. Like the time I was seemingly forever in a body cast. I was paralyzed from the waist down. And when the cast was removed, I can still see her standing, which seemed to me an impossible distance away, and asking me to come to her. Walk to me, she said. And I did. Or when I was 10, my mom put a cigarette in my mouth and said, "Smoke it," which I did, coughed, and I never smoked again, which, of course, was her crazy plan. And later that same year, literally putting me at the head of a big protest march. I don't remember what it was for. There were so many. Being a good walker by that time, so I could talk to Eunice Shriver, wife of an ex-president, and a sister of an ex-president and wife of Sergeant Shriver, who's founded the Peace Corps, for hours. I remember talking to this woman. She was talking to a 10-year-old. She'd take us on camping trips. I remember the campfires, her playing the guitar, singing, the Coleman stove, and then the dining tent that we'd spent so much time in, so much that life's events sort of happened there. I remember we watched the first moonwalk there from a portable TV in that tent. And I wasn't the only one she guided. She smuggled papers into the Soviet Union to get our Russian relatives out. She taught English to hundreds of immigrants. And tutored her grandchildren, including Hava and Ari, to overcome learning needs and coming day after day for years, and never stopped partnering with artists, activists, and others to make this world a better place. Even recently, addled with Alzheimer's, she helped my husband, Joe, quit his accounting job, which he wasn't really that fond of, to pursue his creative dreams. That was just recently. And she often said, more than anything else, art school taught her how to see. Besides art, it was her life outlook, a gift to truly see people, make them feel seen, and so connect and inspire them. And she used to tell me, I could do anything I wanted to. I could be anything I wanted to be. I could do anything I put my mind to. And of course it wasn't true. But I believed it enough to make all the difference in my life. Artist, she was an artist, she was an activist, she was a teacher, a camper, wife, painter, rabble-rouser, singer, student, sculptor, a Zionist, musician, set designer, and a mentor, and mother. A few days ago, one of my mom's nurses came by to let me know she'd never seen anything like our family. And honestly, everyone was there, including my son, who I know was there. And never seen the sort of love, energy, and creativity we displayed. And she said it was clear that Mom was the core of it, the reason for it. And she said I was my mother's child. And I know that makes me lucky. But I will miss her so.
Okay.
So I'm faced with the dilemma of the person who goes last. Hello. Person who goes last in these kinds of gatherings has already had a lot of things said, and you're going to hear some repetition, but that's okay because there are themes that that are going to emerge about our mother that I think are very, very important. So forgive me if I repeat some things, some elements that my brother and my son have also used, but that's just because that's the influence of who my mother was. Mom, you were an amazing human being. We are in pain because you have left us, and we need to say goodbye. But I cannot say goodbye without testifying to the life you have lived and the lessons you have given us. We need to know who you are to truly honor you, and you need to be aware of the impact you have made on all of us as you ascend to the world of truth to give an accounting for your time on earth to the Master of the universe. There are so many lessons to choose from, but I will be short and focus on 3 things. Thing number 1, you were a person of immense kindness and compassion and never spoke ill of anyone. Everyone I have spoken to in the past 24 hours has mentioned this. Even caregivers who've only known you for a week or folks who knew you at Ingleside for a little bit longer. You made everyone feel good in your presence and had a kind and hopeful word for all. There's a verse in Psalm 34 that tells us the secret of long life. Who is the man who desires life and loves days that he may see good? Guard your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. Mom, it is no accident that you merited to reach the age of 91, as gossip and deceitful speech were never something we heard from you. Lesson number 2. This is related to the first lesson and is based on how being an artist impacted your approach to life. Everyone knows you were an accomplished artist. And if anyone ever asked you how you got started in the world of art, there were a few stories that you frequently told. One was about what you learned by attending the Corcoran School of Art as a teenager. You would say, "They didn't teach me how to draw, they taught me how to see." And you would illustrate this for me when we took walks by pointing out that the surface of the asphalt-covered road wasn't really black. If you really looked, you would see shades of purple and dark gray and maybe even slate blue. Your skill in really seeing enabled you to develop skill in the use of colors, shading, and light in your work. But this ability to really see extended beyond art. I think this was a guiding mantra in your life. You had just as my brother said, you had the ability to see the core of goodness in each and every human being. This special sight was felt by all the students you ever taught over the years, who gained much more than content learning from you. They felt affirmed as worthwhile individuals. And I know this how? By the number of students who maintained long relationships with you after they left your classes. Your special sight was also apparent in your intolerance for injustice of any kind. You were very involved in the civil rights movement in the late 60s, going to meetings, signing petitions, marching in rallies and demonstrations, and as my brother said, even bringing us to the demonstrations. And then you became committed to the movement to free Soviet Jews from the oppression that kept them from openly identifying and practicing as Jews. This work culminated in your successful efforts to bring at least 6 of our Russian relatives over to the United States and to teach them how to use their skills to become fully integrated into American society. Finally, lesson number 3. You were a person of continuous growth. You never stood still. Rather, you sought out new challenges to help you grow. In Hebrew, we call this being a mahalech, someone who was walking on the path and setting goals for themselves. In your work as an artist, you moved from oils to acrylics, to watercolors, to paper cuts, to sculpture, to installation art. You did it all. And in your professional life as a teacher, you expanded your skills from teaching 3rd grade elementary school to specializing in English as a second language, and actually founding the original program for that study at the Charles E. Smith School. And in your personal life, well, you had challenges. You had trauma in your childhood before trauma became fashionable. And this affected how you related to other people and how you felt about yourself. But you didn't stay in that place of hurt. You sought out professional help and invested much time and effort to heal from your hurts and become a strong advocate of mental health. Your courage and perseverance is an inspiration to us all. Mom, You have made the days, weeks, months, and years of your life truly count. You have inspired me with your kindness, your ability to see the good, and your dedication to continuous personal growth. You are approaching the heavenly gates as full of good deeds as a pomegranate is full of seeds. May the ministering angels welcome you, and may you find true peace in God's presence.
Anything to be said after Howard or Chaya or Shlomo is unnecessary. You know, I didn't know Mom. I only knew about, but I think today I did. Thank you. We will be going from here to the cemetery. I don't know who are designated as pallbearers. Do we know at all?
I think it's okay.
Because if so, just please, Howard, have them come forward. Okay.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we will be going to Judean Memorial Gardens, which is just simply down the road in Olney, Maryland. Those of you who are able to join us, please return to your cars as quickly as possible. Put on your bright headlights and four-way flashers, and I know we gave you a tag to hang on your rearview mirror as we leave. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as we bring Mrs. Task out of the chapel. Pallbearers, please come forward at this time.
Hang on.
Are you? Are you?
Okay, we have to go out. You know, they said go out to the cars, didn't they?
Okay.
Oh, okay, we have to wait.
Okay, and then, family, if you would just follow.
It should be up. We're on notice.
Yes. Okay, Mike, go back just a minute. Yeah. Go back just a minute. Okay.
You just follow this out. That's why I didn't like it, because it has to. Let me take the car off.
I think it just pause for 1 moment.
Okay, so you reach underneath.
No. Okay, both hands please. And people at the end are going to have to choose a side. Okay, all right, and we could go forward. And place the casket on the rollers and pass it forward. They bring it down just a little bit in the back. Bring it down just a little bit in the back. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, and when we get to the cemetery, if you could just come.
Eishes Chayil Miyimtso, V'rochel B'pnini Michro, Botach B'alev Ba'alo V'sholo Lo Yechsor, G'mulasu Tovo Lo Yiro Kol Yemei Chayeho, Kapo Posu Liyoni V'yoder Shurcho Lo Evyon, Noda Bashurim Ba'alo B'shivto Im Zikni Oretz, Oz V'hodo Levusho, V'tischak L'yom Acharon, Pia Posro B'chochmo, Seras Chesed Al L'shono, Sophia Halichos Beso V'lachematzus Lo Sochel, Komu Boneha V'yashu O Balo V'yahalalo, Rabos Bonos Osuchoyu, Yat Olis Al Kulono, Sheker Achen V'Hebel HaYofi, Yishoi Ras Adonai Hisis Halol, Tenula Mi Piri Yodeha V'Yalu V'Shori Ma'aseo,